Welcome everybody, this is Wargamer Shawn. I'm coming back to you again to continue to talk about the Skaven Battletome. We're going to go over the command traits and spells today. So let's start off with the Master Clan, and they have 6. Now the first 3 command traits are the same for each of the clans, so they're going to be the same. The first one is Malevolent, which is you can reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made with melee weapons by this general. So it's just melee weapons, reroll 1. Verminous Valor. Before you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this general, you can roll a dice, subtract 1 to the roll if the general is a monster or war machine. And on a 4 up, instead of allocating a wound or mortal wound to this general, you can allocate it to a friendly Skaven tied unit within 3 inches of this general. So it's good. The war machine and monster makes it harder for the big things to kind of basically get a lookout sir type thing, and that makes sense. So it's a 5 up instead of a 4 up. The 3 is a Savage Overlord, and that's add 1 to bravery characteristics of friendly Skaven tied units while they're wholly within 1 or 18 inches of the general. It's a good one, I think, and I mean I think it's good, although I think, you know, with the 2 for every 10 leadership, and, you know, with the Vermin Lord, Warpsmith, and basically the abilities like the spells the bell that can make them immune to battle shock, I'm not so sure how many people will be taking it. Now for the Master Clan, number 4 is Supreme Manipulator. You can reroll the dice that determines if you receive an extra command point when you use the Skilled Manipulator battle trait after the general uses a command ability. So basically, normally in Master Clan on a 5 up, you get basically the command point back. In this one, you can reroll it to give you a double chance of getting it back. Master of Magic. Once per hero phase, add 1 to the casting and dispelling or unbinding roll for this general. That's a really good one, and I tend to use that one a lot, just because it's adding, you know, +1 to casting and dispelling and unbinding. Devious or Cunning. The Devious Warlord is kept informed by a vast network of spies. After the battle is started, roll a dice. Each time your opponent receives a command point, on a 6 up, the command point is yours instead of theirs. So basically, you get it instead of them. It's cool, but it's a 6 up. But it's kind of a neat little trick. This kind of reminds me of Night Haunt with the Never King. So with Clan Scryer, like I said, Malevolent, Verminous Valor, Savage Overlord are all the same. Number 4 is Masterful Scavenger, which you add 2 to the number of Warpstone Sparks this general's army can use during the battle. So you basically get 2 more Warpstone Sparks, which is good if you're going to be heavily using Scryer and their abilities. Deranged Inventor. At the start of your shooting phase, you can pick 1 Clan Scryer unit that's wholly within 13 inches of the general. You can reroll hits for attacks made with missile weapons by that unit until the end of the phase. Now that's pretty good if you're going to use a lot of shooting, especially for Scryer, and so that's a really good warlord trait. But remember, it's only 1 unit, it's not multiple. At the start of your shooting phase, this is Overseers of Destruction, you can pick 3 weapon team units that are wholly within 13 inches of the general. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made by those units until the end of that phase. So that one's really good, but it's specific for a weapons team, and you can pick 3. So that's even, you know, better if you're going to use like the little rattling cannons, the little rattling guns, or if you're going to use, you know, some other basically weapon team. Too bad that the one that we lost isn't in there. That would really help rerolling the hit. So Creeds of Corruption are for Clans Pestilence. The first 3 are the same again, and then Master of Rot and Ruin. You can re-roll the dice that determines if your prayer chanted by the general is answered. So it's just by your general, so he'd have to be basically a priest. It's good, and especially if you're counting on those prayers getting basically going off. Architect of Death, you can re-roll wound rolls for attacks made by missile weapons by friendly clan Pestilent units while they're wholly within 18 inches of the general. So that's good if you want to have the general and near a bunch of basically their catapults. It's pretty good. Diseased, at the start of your hero phase, roll a dice. If this general is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, on a 4 up, they inflict D3 mortal wounds on one enemy unit within 3 inches of the general. So that's a pretty good one too. Treacherous Tactics, these are for Clan Verminous. The first 3 are the same again, and then you got Brutal Fury. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can add 3 to the attack characteristics of the general's melee weapons until the end of the phase. So you get 3 extra attacks. That's good. The thing with Verminous, remember that the Claw Lords, even if they're not your general, can get a warlord trait. So that's a good one. Even if you don't want it to be your general, you can still give it to a Claw Lord that maybe you want to get in there and attack or try to kill something. Powerful, add 1 to the general's wound characteristics, so you just get 1 more wound, which is good. Devious Adversary, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made by a melee weapon that targets this general is a 1, add 1 to the attack characteristics of the general's melee weapon until the end of the phase. So everybody that tries to hit him, and if they roll a 1, keep track of that because you get an extra attack with your general that phase, which is pretty good too. Although he can't take a shield anymore, unfortunately, but he still has a 4-up save, which is good. So he may stay alive. He doesn't have a ton of wounds, but he's a little fragile, but it may be worth something. And once again, you've got Claw Lords that you could potentially have, use a warlord trait even though they're not your warlord. Flesh Masteries is Clan's Molder, and the first 3 are the same again. Then you got Molder Supreme. When you use the prize creation battle trait, pick 1 friendly Clan's Molder Fighting Beast model for this general. You can add 3 to the model's wound characteristics instead of D3, or you can add D6 to the model's wound characteristics instead of D3. But if you roll a 1 or 2, you're SOL. But I think it's worth the risk. It's a Skaven thing. Horde Master is the next one, number 5, and that is when this general uses the Unleash More Beast, the command ability, you receive a new unit on a 4+ instead of a 5+. So it's a way for you to do that with your Master Molder, even if you aren't running the battalion that allows you to add 1 and make it a 4+ for anything in that battalion. I like that one, especially, I guess, if you're going to just kind of not run any battalions and you're running a short, it's a good way to try to bring stuff back. But I don't know if I'd use it just because, a lot of times if I'm going to run Molder, I'm actually going to run that battalion and I'm going to get it on a 4+ anyway, anything in that battalion. So Burly, add 1 to the general's wound characteristics. And then Shadowy Master, so Eshin Clan, and the first 3 are the same again. Then you got Unrivaled Killer. You can re-roll hit rolls for attacks made by this general that target an enemy hero chosen for the Master of Murder battle trait. And then Shadow Master, while this general is within 1 inch of a terrain feature, this general is not visible to the enemy model while they are more than 6 inches away from the general. That's actually a really powerful one. So basically they just can't target him. That really makes him safer. 6 is Incredible Agility. This general can fly. Pretty good too. And those 2 are probably the best for Eshin, I think. The problem is I think that Eshin really kind of didn't get the best updates in this book, unfortunately. So we're going to go through the Artifacts of Power. We'll start with Master Clan heroes. 1 is a Warpstone Scroll. once per battle in your hero phase. The bearer can use this scroll, and if they do so, they roll 1 dice for each enemy unit within 13 inches of the bearer. On a 4+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So that's pretty good. Suspicious Stone, and that one is roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to the bearer. On a 5+, that wound or mortal wound is negated. So it's a good one. It's another way to protect them. A lot of the big guys, the big vermin lords, already have a 5+ kind of negate wounds type of protection, so you basically get to roll it twice. The Gnaw Shard. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If any wounds inflicted by that weapon are allocated to an enemy model and not negated, that enemy model suffers 1 mortal wound at the end of each battle round, even if the wounds inflicted by the Gnaw Shard are subsequently healed. So it's basically a way, if you hit them, they keep taking a wound every battle round, which is pretty big. Skaven Brew. This one is once per battle. In your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Skaven-tied unit within 3 inches of the bearer. The unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, but you can add 1 to the attack characteristics of melee weapons used by that unit until your next hero phase. Now that's a really good one, and it's good for anything. I mean, anything that's big, but you could even, let's say you were going to do it to clan rats or storm vermin, they can, basically be subsequently, they basically hit with Nashna, so they're getting +2 attacks. That's pretty big, especially if you get a big horde of them. They're going to do a lot of damage. Now, you could even use it on a large squad of giant rats, and they can't benefit from Nashna, but they're still getting an extra attack, which is pretty good. Now, I think the best one to benefit from it is storm vermin, just because they have a negative rend versus the rest of them don't. The drawback is that the storm vermin are still really expensive. They did become battle line for everybody. I'm not sure why they did for that, but I still think they're pretty points expensive. I was kind of hoping they were going to go down in this Battletome, but they didn't. Snout Grovel Robes. That's number 5, and you do not take battle shock tests for friendly Skaven-tied units while they're wholly within 13 inches of the bearer. That's a good one as well. Although the Crown of Command, which is on the just the Chaos side, which I don't think too many of us are probably going to run that way anymore, but the Crown of Command was anybody within 6 inches, any unit within 6 inches didn't have to take battle shock, which is a little better than wholly within 13. But it's still a very good one. Staff of Rightful Supremacy. Subtract 1 from casting rolls on enemy wizards while they are within 13 inches of the bearer. In addition, once per battle, you can dispel 1 endless spell within 13 inches of the caster. You do not have to roll a 2d6. The dispel automatically is successful. I use that one actually a lot because I like being able to get rid of endless spells. If I kind of save it for if it's going to be really devastating one. And I've already tried, basically, if I ever really want it gone, I'll just do it. Okay. Clan Scryer, the Brass Orb, once per battle. The start of the hero phase, you can roll dice. On a 6, the closest enemy model within 6 inches of the bearer is slain. If several enemy models are equally close, you can pick the one that's slain. That one has been there for the last couple General's Handbooks for Scryer. I know I heard a couple people talking about it. Oh my god, that's so big. But it's actually been around for a while. It's kind of a gimmicky one. I guess if you have a battalion and you don't really know what kind of artifact to take, you can take it to try to do something. But most of the time it's not going to work. Warpstone Armor. You roll dice each time a wound inflicted by a melee weapon is allocated to the bearer and not negated. On a 5-up, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound, so the attacker might get a wound. Esoteric Warp Resonator. At the start of each battle round, you receive 1 extra Warpstone Spark. If the bearer is on the battlefield, the Warpstone Spark can only be used to perform a Warpstone Spark ability with the bearer in the battle round. If it is not used before the end of the battle round in which it was received, it's lost. So the bearer has to use it, and it has to be used that turn or it's lost. So it's a good one, though. It's an extra, Warpstone Spark. Scryer's Breath Bellows. At the start of your hero phase, the bearer can pump the bellows. If they do so, roll a dice for each unit other than the bear that is within 3 inches of the bear. On a 4+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Alright. The Vial of the Fulminator. At the start of your movement phase, you can pick one friendly scry or war machine within 3 inches of the bear. Double the unit's move characteristics until the end of the phase. At the end of the phase, roll a dice on a 4+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. The Vigor Dust Injector. In your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Skaven-tied unit wholly within 12 inches of the bear. Add 1 to charge rolls and to hit rolls for that unit until the next hero phase. However, at the start of your next hero phase, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. I do like that one, because it gives you 1 to your charge rolls and to your hit rolls, which is pretty nice if you really want to get a lot of hits in, and basically try to kill a unit. Clan Pestilence, Befouled Boons, the Blade of Corruption. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. You can reroll wounds for attacks made with that weapon. The Foul Pendant, the wearer can attempt to unbind one spell in the same manner as a wizard. And that's good if you're running very heavy Clan Pestilence and you don't have a wizard. Although, even if you're running all Clan Pestilence, you can have a general that is in the Master Clan, so you should be able to have a wizard in your army, but it's good to have somebody else that can basically unbind spells. Brooding Blade. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. At the end of the combat phase, roll a dice for each model wounded by this weapon but not slain. On a 2+, the model's unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Fumigatus. At the start of each combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 2+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 5+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds instead of 1. Blisterivus, the Living Cyst. Add 2 inches to the bearer's move characteristics. In addition, you can re-roll hit rolls for attacks made by the bearer starting from the second battle round. At the start of your hero phase, if there are any friendly Clan Pestilence heroes within 13 inches of the bearer, you must transfer this artifact to one of them, even if they already carry an artifact of power. So basically, this is cyst that keeps moving around. It's kind of neat because you can pass it around, and it's a Clan Pestilence hero, so it's not just any hero in your army. Liber Bubonicus, the bearer can use the Plague Prayers ability from the Plague Priest War Scroll 114. If the bearer is a Plague Priest, then it can use the Plague Prayers ability twice in your next hero phase. Twice in your hero phase. Clan Verminus, the Warp Touch Wargear. Thing's Bane. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add 1 to the damage characteristics of that weapon. It's a really good one. Shield of Distraction, reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks made that target the bearer. In addition, at the start of the combat phase, pick one enemy model within 3 inches of the bearer, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by that model in that combat phase, which is really good too. Screech Skull Trophies. Poor Screech. Subtract 1 from bravery characteristics of enemy units while they're within 13 inches of the bearer. Flaypelt Cloak. You can re-roll hit and wound rolls of 1 for attacks made with a melee weapon by the bearer. Rust Cursed Armor. Reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that target the bearer. In addition, at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero with an artifact of power that's within 3 inches of the bearer and roll 3d6. If the roll is exactly 13, then that artifact of power can no longer be used. If a weapon was picked when the artifact of power was selected, the weapon reverts back to normal. That's a pretty big one, but once again, you gotta get 13. But it makes complete sense for Skaven. Warpstorm Charm. At the start of your hero phase, pick one unit within 3 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 2 through 5, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 6, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Note, if there are no enemy units within 3 inches, you must pick either a friendly unit or the bearer to be the target. So, yeah, that one's going to just hurt you. Not such a big fan of that one. Molder. Lash of Fangs. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. If unmodified, hit roll for an attack made with that weapon is a 6, and the attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. The Foul Hide. If you're hero phase, you can heal up to D3 D3 wounds allocated to the bearer. Snap Snap Snare Pole. At the start of the combat phase, pick one enemy model within 3 inches of the bearer. Subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks made by that model in that combat phase. The Rat Tail Snake. If the unmodified save roll for the attack that targets the bearer is a 6, the attack unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been resolved. The Rabid Crown, and I really like this one. I've used this one almost every time when I am running the battalion for the Mulder clan. You can re-roll wound rolls for attacks made by friendly clan Mulder pack units while they're wholly within 13 inches of the bearer. That's a really big one, especially for giant rats that maybe are hitting on 4s or 5s. Re-rolling that is really good. Flesh Gift Vial. Once per battle in your shooting phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 1, the bearer suffers 1 mortal wound. On 2 through 5, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 6, the enemy unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. Alright. Tools of Murder, Clan Eshin. Shadow Magic Trinket. Once per battle, the bearer can fight at the start of the combat phase before the player picks any other units to fight in that combat phase. The bearer cannot fight again in the combat phase unless an ability or spell allows it to fight more than once. Okay. Once per battle, at the end of your movement phase, you can remove the bearer from the battlefield and set them up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy units. It's a Far Skitter Cloak. The Three Fangs. Once per battle at the start of your shooting phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 6 inches of the bearer and roll 3 dice. If all 3 rolls are 3+ and the combined value of the 3 dice is greater than the enemy wound characteristics, that enemy model is slain. And that's actually a really good one. Now you have to get at least 3 3s, so that's at least 9 wounds. But if you have, a character or a hero that's 10 wounds, it's worth a try. Warp Weeper Stars. And I think that's actually maybe a better one than the roll 1, 6 and kill the thing that's closest to you. Warp Weeper Stars. Pick one of the bearer's missile weapons. If the unmodified wound rolls for an attack made by this weapon is 6, that attack inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target in addition to any normal damage. Once per battle, the Cube of Mists. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer. That unit cannot make a pile-in move that combat phase. In addition, subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks made by that unit in the combat phase. That's a really big one too. Gnaw Bomb. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can pick one terrain feature within 6 inches of the bearer. Until the next hero phase, that terrain feature has the scenery rules for from the Naho War Scroll in addition to the scenery rules it already has. So you can basically make an Naho. Spell lures. Let's go through the Grey Seers, the lore of Ruin. There's 6 of them. One is Scorch, and that has a casting value of 5. If you successfully cast it, pick one enemy unit within 13 inches of the caster and visible to them, and roll a number of dice equal to the casting roll. For each 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Okay, Splinter. Splinter has a casting value of 6. If successful, pick an enemy unit within 6 inches of the caster and roll a dice. If the roll is greater than the model's wound characteristic, it is slain. Skitterleap. Skitterleap has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Skaven hero with a wound characteristic of 12 or less, so that means no more Skitterleaping, Thankful, and Bone Ripper. And then remove them, as long as they're within 13 inches of the caster and visible to them, remove the hero from the battlefield and set them up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from any enemy units. That hero may not move in the following movement phase. Okay, Plague. Plague has a casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within 13 inches of the caster and roll dice for each model in the unit. For every 5+, that unit suffers a mortal wound, which is really good for big horde units or big units. Death Frenzy. Death Frenzy has a casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Skaven Tide unit and that is not a hero, and which is wholly within 13 inches of the caster, invisible to them. Until your next hero phase, that model, when a model from that unit is slain, before it is removed from play, it can make a pile-in move and then attack with all of its melee weapons it is armed with. It's a pretty good one. Warp Gale has a casting value of 8. If successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within 26 inches of the caster, invisible to them. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and then any run or charge rolls for that unit are halved until your next hero phase. If that unit can fly, it cannot fly until your next hero phase, in addition to having its run and charge rolls. It's a pretty big one. It's kind of a weaker version of what the Warp Seer Verminlord has. Okay, and so obviously Skitter Leap is a weaker version of what the Verminlord Deceiver has. Okay, the lore of the Warp Volt Galvanism, which is Clan Scryer. They have 3 spells. They have more Warp Power. More Warp Power is a casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Clan Scryer unit wholly within 12 inches of the caster, invisible to them. You can re-roll hit and wound rolls for that unit until your next hero phase. However, at the start or the end of your next hero phase, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So you can re-roll hit and wound rolls for that unit, but they do take a hit for it, but not the end of the world. Chain Warp Lightning has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick up to D6 enemy units within 18 inches of the caster. Each of those units suffer 1 mortal wound. Warp Lightning Shield. Warp Lightning Shield has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast until your next hero phase, the first 3 wounds allocated to the caster in the end phase, of each phase are negated. If a 4th wound is allocated to the caster in the same phase, then the caster suffers D6 mortal wounds and the spell is unbound. The first 3 allocated wounds in the phase are still negated. So it's kind of a chancy one. You know, if you're hoping you're not going to get hit too many times, then it's worth doing. But if you think you might get more than 3 wounds, you're going to take D6 mortal wounds, which may kill you. All right, so that is the spells and the warlord traits and basically the little artifacts that we can have. Our next video, we're going to start going into the actual war scrolls. What we're going to start with, Master Clan, and we're going to work our way through clans individually. I just think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. We'll do Master Clan first and then go from there. Hope to see you next time. Hopefully you're enjoying this. I'm sorry once again for having it be so long from the last set of videos, but hopefully you're enjoying these, and take care and keep on wargaming.
Goodbye, you sexy motherfucker.